So the new man is not a soldier or a wild man as it used to be presented, the ultimate ideal, like the family man, the wild man, the soldier. That was in the past, and that worked in the past, and it was great at the time. But right now we live in a very different era, and you can see how everything is changing around you, like everything. And so the way we develop ourselves has to follow if we want to win in life. Here we go then.
Here we go, man. Well, dude, we're finally making it happen. Collaboration.
Yeah.
Where are you at right now?
I'm in London. What about you?
London?
Yeah,
Okay,
London,
I'm in
UK.
Vegas right now. Yeah. So, and I know you were doing some traveling too, yeah?
Yeah, that's part of my work. I take people to train their mind in different places that are aligned with their energy. And it's actually super important that you train in a place that is aligned with you. I think that's why many people fail, because say they go to retreat or a seminar and it's not really the place where they're supported.
Got you. So do you pick your spots like based on the client you're working with, or do you
That's
just
right,
like
yeah.
wow, that's awesome, man. So you like sit
Yeah, because
down with them and do you ask them like where you feel called to, or can you like
Uh, no, I
energy?
can read energy. I can read their energy, so I don't need to ask them. Also, because they would know. Most people don't know their energy well enough to actually give an answer.
Got you. So I know we have four topics we're going to jump into on this call: purpose, masculinity of the new era, which I'm really actually excited to talk about, becoming the elite version of yourself, and then mindfulness. But I kind of want to get your origin story because we really haven't talked too much. We kind of like sent messages back and forth. So
Yeah.
like, how did you get into being like a spiritual mentor, reading energy? What's your origin story, Jay?
Okay, so I started doing that just over 20 years ago. And the reason why was because I, well, had those skills from birth, but this is because I did that in previous lifetimes. So I don't want it to sound fluffy because it's not. There is a small number of people that can remember their past lives. So I'm one of those people.
You're one of them.
And
I'm jealous.
it happens, well, I would say there are pluses and minuses to that.
Right.
But it's super good for spiritual work because with spiritual development, it's awesome because everything that you do actually stays with you forever. So anything else that you invest in, money, physical development, career, you name it, goes when you finish this incarnation, but spiritual development actually stays with you and you get to keep those skills as you move forward. And this is why it makes me laugh so much sometimes. When you meet someone and they're like, I can sense the future, I can heal with my hands, but I don't understand why. And I'm like, dude, because you had training in your previous lifetime, this is where it's from. So I often say to my students, like, you may not remember me going forward, but you will get to keep those skills that you're developing training with me. And so with spiritual development, especially as you get older as a soul, you get to remember more and more of your lifetimes that you've lived through, which helps you with integrity because you don't see yourself as this separate ego story, oh, this little me in this lifetime. But you remember yourself living through different eras, different countries, different cultures, and then you become a sum total of those experiences, which puts you in a much stronger position, but also gives you many viewpoints and the ability to help your clients more because you've made so many mistakes, you've lived through so many experiences that you actually understand a lot more patterns. And yeah, so this is what happened. Because I remembered my past lives, I was never really a kid, like a child or a teenager, because you can't if you get
How old
born
are you
with
now, by
those
the way, Jay?
memories. Sorry.
How old are you right now?
Oh, I'm 41.
41? Man, dude, you look fucking like 21. That's
I
insane.
know. This is
Um,
on purpose. I
got
did
you.
it on purpose because I like looking this way. and it's
Yeah.
part of my integrity, and it just suits me. So I kept it this way. We have an actual mechanism in our body and our mind that allows us to control our body to a high degree. And you might have heard it from yoga, but there are also other applications like self-healing or changing your look to what you feel is congruent with who you are.
Cool. So you started at like an early age, like as like a little kid, that you just remembered your
I
past
started
life.
when I was about 18, I would say.
18? Okay. All right, cool.
How
And
old are
what
you,
was that?
man?
I'm 33. Yeah, in this lifetime.
All right, the age
I
of
definitely know,
Jesus.
like, I definitely know that I've lived past lives and I kind of get like glimpses of them. And like you said, like I feel like as I get older, they kind of unravel. And I think that's part of like the narrative and it kind of like you said too, like it helps you on your journey and whatnot. I kind of wanted to, just because I'm a rebellious person, just like go to like a seer or find someone reliable and like just get them all out of the way and like get them all shown to me. But I mean, I think when I get called to that, like when that feels right to me, then I'll do that. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. I enjoy where I'm at in the work I'm doing now. So yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Let's dive into masculinity of a new era. I think that's a good string to kind of start with the and kind of like wrap the other four topics or three topics around it. But what is your take on masculinity as we head into a new era? Like where's masculinity going? And where should masculinity be focused on?
I love the question because it's so important and it's so relevant right now, like you wouldn't believe. And so many people get it wrong, which is painful to watch. So this is what's happening. You know how we have seasons during the year, like we
Yeah.
have, spring, summer, autumn, right? So something like that also takes place on a greater scale with the whole Earth in the universe. Because, as we're talking right now, we're actually traveling through space at an enormous speed, together with our planet, together with the solar system. And so, what most people don't realize, there are things like cosmic seasons as well. So, as
Cosmic what?
cosmic seasons.
Cosmic seasons. Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So, and it's just something that has always been there because as we travel through space, our solar system and our planet, we obviously orbit around the center of our galaxy. So just as seasons are created on Earth, because the Earth is orbiting around the sun, right? But our solar system is also orbiting around the center of the galaxy. So it also has seasons, except they're much, much longer. And this is why not everyone is aware of them, but they're super important. So there is something called the cosmic hour. And one cosmic hour lasts for about 2,000 years, 2,160 years. So that's 1 hour. And
Why is it called the cosmic hour?
yeah,
No,
so
why? Yeah, go ahead.
sorry.
I was asking
Yeah,
why is it called the cosmic hour then if it's like 2,000 years?
from the standpoint of the universe, it's just 1 hour.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's an equivalent of 1 hour in our understanding. And so what happens is every time they change, they have a different polarity. Okay, so you know about polarity, the masculine and the feminine, the magnetic.
What has a
And
different polarity though? Like the stars or what?
each of those cosmic hours has its own energy.
Okay, gotcha.
And apart from its own unique energy, it also has a polarity. So they keep switching plus, minus, masculine, feminine, masculine, feminine. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And so for the last 2,000 years, we lived in a very feminine, magnetic era. And right now, we've entered a new era, which is referred to as the era of Aquarius. And I know there is a lot of misunderstanding going on about it, but essentially, we've just entered the new cosmic hour. And this new hour has a very different energy from the previous one. So the previous one was passive, receptive, because it's the feminine polarity. Now, the masculine polarity is about creating, not accepting, but creating, as you know. And so, as this polarity has switched, we've now entered a whole new era for the next 2000 years of positive, creative, masculine energy.
Nice.
And yeah, so it's awesome. But the problem is that self-development as it stands right now, it originates from parts of the world that prefer the feminine way of developing, and also it based on the previous era. So things that worked back then and they were awesome back then are not going to work right now, but they're actually hurting the people who practice them, especially the men. So women can get away with that, but men not really. And so in this new
Can you give
masculine,
examples of that
sorry.
too? Can you give some examples of that too? About how?
Yeah, sure. I was going to actually go into it. Absolutely. So here's the thing. If you look into self-development right now, the way it's being practiced, the main idea, or one of the main ideas, is, oh, you should accept, surrender, surrender to acceptance, all of this stuff. And thing is, it's the feminine polarity, because the masculine polarity is to create your new reality in accordance with your will. And it's a very, very fundamental difference between the masculine and the feminine. So we see them as men and women, obviously, because on the physical level, they represent themselves this way. But we need to understand that the masculine and the feminine are the actual forces in the universe. So it's the electric force and the magnetic force. And so the electric, the masculine force, is about making things happen, going first and blazing your own trail, not accepting or surrendering. So if you start adopting the mindset of the opposite polarity, aka deal with what is, accept what is, do not rebel, keep down, that is actually hurting your masculine core. And when that happens, you then become a much weaker version of yourself. And if that happens, you then become open to manipulation from other people, because you're not in your truth, you're not in your power, and you're just not standing on a stable ground. So this is why I'm saying that adopting this way of self-development is really hurtful for men.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot. What were some of the, well, I guess you talked about like surrender, right? Like,
yeah.
Is there some exercises or things that you see common in the self-development field that are being promoted that you're just like, dude, that's fucking up your masculine core? Like, don't do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ayahuasca is one.
What's that?
Ayahuasca.
Oh, okay. Tell me more about that.
Okay.
Why is that fucking up masculine?
Oh, that can that can hook you up like nothing else can, pretty much. So with ayahuasca and shamanism, what happens is it came from somewhere else. Like, for example, it came from Amazonia, right? And in those cultures, it was designed for their type of mind. And it was given people after a really profound spiritual training. So people would not just go and distribute it to random guys saying, hey, just drink this, it's going to be fine. But right now, it became a huge industry where people are invited to believe that if they drink that, somehow all their problems are going to disappear. They're going to become automatically enlightened for a modest price of maybe $1,000 or $3,000, whatever they charge for the retreats. And of course, people being lazy, their ego being lazy, actually not their true self, but the ego being lazy, thinks, oh, that's a sweet deal, because if I can just pay $1,000 and get enlightened, that's like awesome. 3 days, I don't need to do any work.
Yeah. It's the magic pill that we're always looking for as
humans.
Exactly,
right. And the thing is, if someone does it without prior preparation, I've seen so many people being so absolutely destroyed by that mentally. I met people who took years to recover. Some of my students came to me because they looked for help, and I did help them out. One of the most important things that you need to have if you even consider trying ayahuasca, you have to know how your mind works, because it breaks your mind. So you need to know how to fix it. So unless it's like, imagine with a car, like back in the days when people used to fix their own cars, like you wouldn't go to a place where there are no service centers unless you knew how to fix it yourself, because you would understand that if you can't, then if something happens, you're screwed. And so with many people, and this is what happens. For example, one of my students told me this story. So he took ayahuasca several times, and one of those times things went really wrong, like really, really wrong and really dark. And he said, so one of the most terrifying moments in my whole life was when I was just drowning in that terror and some demons attacking me. And I crawled on all fours to the shaman, asking him to help. And he saw an expression of pure fear in his eyes because he had no idea what to do.
Wow.
And my student said, and at that point, I realized that I'm on my own with this. So like I'm stuck. And then he found me, so I helped him out. But shamanism specifically is a feminine way of discovering the world and discovering yourself. So again, it's not something I would suggest for the guys to do, simply because it can damage you so much that it's literally not worth it.
What about the harmonization of your masculine and feminine energy?
Oh, because you start doing that, how about developing your masculine first, like really strong, and then see what else you can do on top of that?
Oh yeah, I agree with that for sure. Like for me, even this year, like I've been doing a lot of harmonizing between my masculine and feminine, and seeing what softens me when I don't want it to be softened, and then like what hardens me and gets me that focus. And they're both of value. Like I don't like being rigid all the time in my masculine, but I do like to flow. I like to ebb and flow, like especially with my creativity and whatnot. But it's the balancing between that, you know, the hardening and the softening.
Oh, actually, that's really interesting because that leads more to the masculinity of the new era. So as this new era, the era of Aquarius, is now upon us, each era shows, or rather shows, the root for the masculine and the feminine principle to be played out and represented in a unique way. So every 2000 years, we have a new opportunity to discover those principles and manifest them in the world. And so right now, with the era of Aquarius, we are actually kind of forced to discover this new way of expressing masculinity that has not been seen in many, many thousands of years. Namely, the man of a new era is not a purely physical being, but it's a true union of the physical and the spiritual. I think this is what most people confuse with being feminine. And so that is something that is very important to delve into, because the sooner you do it, the sooner you will become a lot stronger and aligned with the energy of time. And the energy of time actually acts like a wind for your sails. So if you align yourself, like look at the people who have aligned themselves with the energy of time, and it just creates enormous successes for them. And people who try to do things the old way struggle more and more. And increasingly, they will be left by the wayside, because the energy of time, you can imagine it like water. So it just rushes forward. If you go with the flow, you're the winner. If you try to fight it, and if you try to live the old way, that's actually going to just push you to the shore. And the man of the new era is not the same person as even mid-20th century. And this is also why masculine development right now is failing men in many ways. Because if you looked at masculine development websites and camps and boot camps, you will notice that they are actually trying to role play something that used to be their ideal of masculinity in
Mhm.
the early 20s and late 19th century. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? A gentleman or a soldier from the Second World
Right.
War. Now,
Mm,
back then it was awesome. And I agree that those men were magnificent, but they were children of their own time, of their own era. And this is
right.
why they were winning. If you try to role play it right now, it's actually going to work against you because you put yourself out of the flow of time. You become like a fossil. And so that
Mm,
is not the way. The actual way is becoming more aligned with your true self, your higher self, and that gives you the feeling of flow. So the new man is not a soldier or a wild man as it used to be presented, oh, the ultimate ideal, like the family man, the wild man, the soldier.
mm.
That was in the past, and that worked in the past and was great at the time. But right now we live in a very different era, and you can see how everything is changing around you, like everything. And so
Mm.
the way we develop ourselves has to follow if we want to win in life. And so the man of the new era is the creator of realities.
Yeah, I definitely vibe with that. And I'm trying to remember too, you said a few things that men should be focused on to be kind of in alignment with this. The cycle that we're in is, what is it? Their willpower, and creative ability. Those are like the two main focuses.
Willpower comes
Willpower.
from knowing where you stand. So it comes from integrity. Willpower is not a thing in itself, it's a side effect of you being committed because you know where you stand.
Gotcha. And that goes back to connecting to your higher self and your true self, because like the more,
That's
and I
right.
always find that like, who said that back in the day, like Aristotle or some old philosopher, but he was like to know thyself, but it pops up everywhere, and like even in
Yeah.
my own, like the more I know myself, the more I see how I relate to the world and whatnot, and that's where you get that deeper. That's where you build your integrity and get your willpower and all that.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.